Hi everybody and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. I've got Mark Keohane. Mark, let's get straight into the Bledisloe Cup rugby.
Yeah, it won't be a club, but a cup.
No. Well, it might be a club.
Yeah, it should be a club, given what we've seen from the Australians and the New Zealanders. Lots of to and fro between Australia and New Zealand. Dave Rennie, the New Zealand-born coached the Chiefs to 2 Super Rugby titles.
Took over from Foster.
Yeah, it made them successful in a region where Foster never did. So that'll be interesting to see how those two go. He said two weeks not enough to prepare his players. They certainly can't come to New Zealand and stay in quarantine for the equivalent of 10 days. He won't play those Bledisloe Cup games. Australia then said they'll take one of the games away from New Zealand. And for those not versed with Bledisloe, New Zealand have retained it for the last 20 years. You have to win it outright. So of the 4 tests put down for this season, Australia would have to win 3. With 2 being in New Zealand, the chances are, best case scenario for Australia, 2-2. They win the 2 in Australia. So Rennie said, we'll take the one over there. New Zealand Rugby said, up yours. So the stalemate was there again. And the big attack on the New Zealand government and the Prime Minister to say, you cost us the Rugby Championship with these stringent rules for quarantine. You've cost us everything, and now you're potentially going to cost us the Bledisloe Cup. She phoned the Prime Minister. They came to an agreement. They'll relax the rules for the Australians. The Australians are now going to be in New Zealand. They'll play 2 afternoon tests on Sundays, the 11th of October in Wellington and the 18th of October in Auckland at Eden Park. I tweeted the power of the All Blacks, and one of the respected journalists, Mark Keohane, responded, no, the power of an election.
Exactly.
And everything is now pointing to the election, because the election day is, I think it's in that week between the 11th and the 18th of October. So obviously the existing government wants that feel-good factor around the All Blacks, but we will have test rugby. And again, you've got to then question South Africa's participation in a rugby championship. New Zealand will have come out of 3 months of Super Rugby, a North versus South All Black trial, a fantastic game, 4 rounds of Mitre Cup, 2 Bledisloe Cup games, into a South African squad that has played potentially 3 matches of rugby. It would just be...
I think General Custer had greater chance of getting out of it.
I think he did. So there was a report in the report. So, and I know that is kind of one of the publications that Rassie does speak through. And there was talk of sending a very inexperienced feeder Springbok side over there for them to just kind of get the hang of it, play in a competition, and they rest their top 10, 15 Springboks. So lots of Australasian rugby happening. I believe we're going to start on the 27th at Loftus with the Superheroes Day. The talk again is that on the week after that, there'll be a kind of state of origin North versus South / Springbok trial match, and then they'll go into that competition, which will double as a Super Rugby competition and a Currie Cup competition, and then after the first month, those blocks get taken out. But if they do go, they're going to take 45 players with them, and that's a hell of a lot to take out of a domestic competition.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just hope the right, Yuri Roo and Rassie keep on saying it, we must make the right rugby decision this year for South African rugby and the Springboks.
Well, the wrong rugby decision is to go and play in the championship.
Yeah, with all the restrictions and the kind of hurry up and wait, and we go there as world champions.
Yeah.
And you know the public, the minute we take one beating, that World Championship for the next 3 years is actually forgotten. The scoreboard doesn't say...
It'll take the shine off the World Cup, won't it?
It will, and it's like, it doesn't say feed a Springbok team. You know, I remember when I was
Sorry, Mark, not to me, or not to you, but to the unknowledgeable South Africans out there that'll start to get on that bandwagon about losing to New Zealand. We will lose to New Zealand if we go to the championship, and we may well lose to Australia.
Yeah, it's just we would be so underprepared, and Jacques Nienaber has constantly said it, is how can you expect, these guys they started contact training 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
How can they be mentally prepared after 3 or potentially 4 matches of rugby and then a quarantine phase and then into a competitive test match against players who have been going for the last 4 months? And you're on a hiding to nothing regardless.
I've got a greater chance of dating Heidi Klum next week than the Boks beating New Zealand in New Zealand. That undercooked.
Interesting. I didn't know she was on the dating scene again.
Well, that's my point.
But it's like the craziest of year, obviously because of COVID. And I really think South Africa should just look after themselves this year, have the most amazing domestic competition.
Yeah.
Get the crowds packed in when they can come in, but get the incitement going. New Zealand found that when they went this double header, their top 5 teams against each other, it lifted the quality of their game. The crowds got interested again because there wasn't a Rebels game, a week Kings that were playing the next week, a Brumbies coming over to South Africa. Oh, was there a game? It was these teams against each other. So if you had a full-strength Stormers up against the Bulls, double header, all the other teams coming in with all the best players, you would just set the tone for me for a fantastic springboard to the British and Irish Lions tour next year, which by all accounts for most venues is going to be a sellout, and it's going to be the tour of the year in World Rugby, and one of the best sporting events in South Africa since 2010 FIFA Soccer World Cup. So there is commercial value to SA Rugby from that tour, and it's kind of like a lifesaver in terms of its timing.
Well, then there still must be a heavy commercial element to playing going over and playing in the championship.
Yes, and they do have contractual obligations to go over and play. So it's again, we'll send you a Springbok team, but it may be an under-23 side effectively, with a couple of sprinkling of overseas players who've been playing for the last 2 months. You look at the two Dupree brothers, the forwards have been playing very well for Sale. Fast been in good form. Unfortunately, Pollard's out for the year. Ergis Snyman's out for the year. Esabet's injured. Lut de Jager's injured. So there's a lot of heavyweight players there that are injured. But, you know, there's always a silver lining in an injury, rather this year than next year, when we certainly need those players for the Lions to take that series, be it 2-1 or 3-0. So finally, I just feel we're talking about rugby again. And we're talking about games, the potential of games and players. So a lot of interest in the South African-based players. Surprised that Sale Sharks went down at home to Bath. They were on a bit of a run. But they still look like they will qualify for the semi-finals and final. But the South African players have all been released for a training camp in South Africa as well. So yeah, it's 27th of September. If it happens, can't come soon enough. Loftus is the double header. And interesting to watch Dave Rennie sparring with Ian Foster. Both having coached the Chiefs, and be very interesting to see how New Zealand reacts to playing against a New Zealand-born coach again, because there's certainly not that fear factor from him.
No.
And he knows a lot of those players.
No, and he was far more successful than Foster was with the Chiefs.
Back-to-back championships. He did well with the All Black under-20s. And we know we consistently say with Foster, good skillful coach, potentially good assistant coach. My reservation is huge for him as a head coach.
Mine too, but the stars seem to be aligning for him, Mark.
They do, and I'll tell you one thing that has interested me is how well Plum is integrated back into the New Zealand system. John Plumtree, like 2 decades with the Sharks, had great ambitions of coaching the Springboks, went and assistant coach to Ireland, went back to Wellington, got the Hurricanes head coaching job, has brought in as a forwards coach, and I see he's been quoted a lot in the media to say they're trying to pick a different type of All Black forward, one that won't get beaten up by the Springboks and beaten up by England, because that's what they feel happened to them at the World Cup. Even though they win against the Boks, they were physically not up to it. So, interesting dynamic.
That is an interesting dynamic, and when you over the last decade, with the exception of a few outings, it's been I felt it was always the All Blacks who were beating up the Springboks, unless I've been watching a different game.
No, it's again though the one thing that no one ever gives that All Black pack credit, and they tend to, and they're like the Crusaders pack. You don't think that they're hammering you, but they do, and they're backing enough ball. But what's in the public's memory is that disintegration against England, and they got bullied, and they got tossed around like ragdolls in that game. And it only has to happen once in 10 years, and that's the game they remember. People also, I once said to Ollie, what do you think of Manny Pacquiao? He said the guy got knocked out cold like that. No, the bloke who's won 8 championship belts in different divisions. But that thunderous knockout blow that he suffered. So it's going to take a big effort from the All Blacks against a side like the Springboks or England to, in a way, erase that memory of what happened in Tokyo. But yeah, exciting times over the next month. I just want to see Ajax on the field. And I still think we can pick a bloody good side with the international players who are overseas and the local players. And it does give Jacques Nienaber and Rassie a huge opportunity to see how effective would they be without Pollard. So is it Jantjies, is it Bosch, is it Willemse, is it a Robert Dupree that comes into the 10 channel? Because I think Pollard was without comparison as our 10. He was to South Africa what a Dan Carter was to New Zealand. And in his absence, we may see just why he is that highly rated, why he was the World Under-21 Player of the Year. It's brilliant on his debut at 21. He had those 2 years of horror injuries. Sometimes you only know how good a player is when you're sitting in the stands.
Absolutely. But I still think, we've got to lower expectations way down for any championship series.
Yeah, we've got to think world champions against the British and Irish Lions next year. That's going to be the measurement of where South African rugby has gone to.
Yeah.
This could be a write-off championship. It's, you know, I talk about us, poor bloody Argentina. You know, who do they play against? They've only got one team that's based there. So they can't even enter a domestic competition that would give them kind of some form of ideal preparation. I'm surprised the Rugby Championship is going ahead under these circumstances. I get that they have to give broadcasters matches, but there cannot be any expectation other than the Boks go over there and they play with a bit of heart. They play for a jersey. But for anyone to say, I'm disappointed if the Boks lose, they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
No, because they'll lose both tests to New Zealand and they'll lose one of the tests to Australia, I'm convinced.
And the fact that the way they're talking, it's a Wednesday, Saturday kind of scenario.
Yeah.
So you have to integrate that 45-man squad. And it's just, and when it comes to depth, I do think New Zealand has got the wood on us in terms of player depth. They may not have the forwards we have, but they can field two teams that potentially are stronger than South Africa on the day. But over and above that, one team will have had 5 months of preparation, and one team wouldn't have had 5 weeks.
No, and there won't be the leveling factor of heavy conditions, of rain, and I mean it'll be summer in New Zealand then.
Yeah, New Zealand and Australia, and it's kind of sparse crowds as well. It will be a soulless kind of exercise, a bit like when Australia played New Zealand in that one-day cricket with no one at the SCG. You could hear the bloke coming to the crease with his pads squeaking, other bloke getting the ball out of the stands. It looked like garden cricket on a Sunday looks more exciting than that has looked. And I still struggle to come to terms with watching games without crowds there.
Yeah, no, me too. It is, like you say, soulless. But look, I think the South African public is not hungry. They're ravenous for some sort of rugby. And rightly so. It's been months and months.
It has been, and already I think in the absence we've forgotten who our players are.
Yeah.
You know, and it'd be just great to see them back on the field, and for us just to have our own competition and actually start raving about our players, not looking overseas and thinking everything is glorious again over there, because it's not.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks for your insight, as always, and I'll see you again.
Thanks, Kev.